The first indication came from the Hubble Deep Space Array, an anomalous reading that astronomer Dr. Eliza Chen initially dismissed as equipment malfunction. The gravitational distortions appeared at the edge of the Kuiper belt, subtle ripples that would have gone unnoticed if not for the quantum detection algorithms she had developed during her postdoc years. At 3:17 a.m. Greenwich time, she called her supervisor at NASA with trembling hands. "This isn't a false positive, Director Williams. Something massive is approaching, and it's deliberately masking its signature." Within hours, observatories across the globe confirmed her findings. The objects, thousands of them, maintained perfect formation while accelerating toward Earth at speeds that defied conventional physics. President Harlow received the briefing in the Situation Room, surrounded by Joint Chiefs whose expressions conveyed what classified reports couldn't. Humanity faced something unprecedented. "How long until they reach Earth?" the President asked. 36 hours at current velocity," replied General Sarah Winters, her weathered face illuminated by holographic projections. "Though they could arrive sooner if they choose." The decision to inform the public came after heated debate. Mass panic could prove more dangerous than the approaching fleet, some argued. Others insisted humanity deserved the chance to prepare, to spend what might be their final hours with loved ones. In the end, transparency won out, a decision that would later prove crucial to Earth's survival. The President's address reached 93% of the global population. Markets froze, religious gatherings swelled, and military reservists reported for duty en masse. Yet the anticipated chaos never materialized. Instead, something remarkable happened. A species that had spent millennia divided by borders, ideologies, and resources discovered unity in the face of extinction. The Armada became visible to the naked eye at sunset, their obsidian hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They positioned themselves in geosynchronous orbit, 8,000 vessels ranging from nimble fighters to behemoths that dwarfed aircraft carriers. The formation created a partial eclipse over the northern hemisphere, a shadow that meteorologists hadn't predicted and couldn't explain to frightened citizens. Communications arrays worldwide detected the signal simultaneously, a gravitational pulse that overrode every electronic device on Earth, from military-grade quantum computers to children's tablets. The message appeared in perfect regional dialects, suggesting the visitors had studied humanity extensively. "People of Earth," the transmission began, the voice artificially modulated to convey authority without aggression. "I am Admiral Zorax, emissary of the Imperial hegemony. Your civilization has been selected for integration into our collective. This process is non-negotiable, but need not be unpleasant. Relinquish your sovereignty within one planetary rotation, and the transition will proceed without biological reduction. Resistance would be mathematically futile and historically unprecedented. We await your formal capitulation." In the Pentagon's crisis room, General Winters studied magnified images of the Imperial flagship, noting details that others missed. Microscopic battle damage, suggesting these conquerors had faced resistance before, despite their claims. Beside her, NASA Director Chen discreetly passed her a classified tablet containing thermal scans that revealed critical information. The alien vessels generated heat signatures inconsistent with their apparent mass. They were projecting an illusion of invulnerability. "They're bluffing," Winters whispered. "Not about their strength. They could indeed glass the planet, but about never facing resistance." The emergency United Nations session lasted precisely 17 minutes, the shortest in history. Representatives from 194 nations voted unanimously for the first time since the organization's founding. Their response to the ultimatum: a single word transmitted in all Earth languages simultaneously: no. Beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, technicians activated systems that had remained dormant since the Cold War, not the nuclear arsenal that Imperial sensors expected, but something far more dangerous: Protocol Prometheus. In secure facilities across all continents, sealed doors opened to reveal technology decades ahead of what humanity publicly acknowledged possessing. Admiral Zorax received Earth's response with mild surprise. His mandibles clicked in what his species considered amusement as he ordered the standard conquest protocols. The hegemony had incorporated thousands of civilizations into its empire. This backwater planet would be no different. His extensive database contained no record of any species successfully resisting integration. But the database contained a critical omission. It had never encountered humans before. The facility beneath Mount Yamato had no official designation on any Russian military document. Accessible only through a mining operation that had supposedly closed in 1995, the vast underground complex hummed with activity as Dr. Mikhail Voronin removed his biometric-sealed case from a nitrogen-cooled vault. 27 years, he murmured, his breath fogging in the sub-zero storage chamber. We always hoped this day would never come. The case contained a crystalline lattice harvested from the Tunguska impact site, alien technology that had taken decades to understand and adapt. Similar retrievals had occurred at Roswell, the Bermuda Triangle, and 12 other locations where extraterrestrial craft had crashed while surveying Earth. Humanity had kept these discoveries secret even from themselves, compartmentalizing knowledge across nations that otherwise remained geopolitical rivals. Across the world, 38 similar facilities activated simultaneously. The Chinese Quantum Laboratory beneath the Gobi Desert, the Aquatic Research Center hidden below the Great Barrier Reef, the repurposed missile silos throughout the American Midwest, now housing technology reverse-engineered from recovered Imperial scout ships. At Area 51, a site whose public mythology served perfectly to obscure its true purpose, Dr. Elena Singh transmitted the activation sequence for the Orbital Defense Network. For decades, every satellite launch had included microscopic components that appeared non-functional until receiving her precise quantum signature. Now, thousands of seemingly ordinary communications satellites reconfigured themselves into a planetary defense grid. The net is deployed, she confirmed to General Winters. Radius extended to lunar orbit. If they try to land, they'll have a surprise waiting. The general nodded grimly. And the Lazarus Protocol. The first generation is awake and operational. Deep within the Mariana Trench, massive hangar doors opened for the first time since 2018. The submersible carriers, biological mechanical hybrids created through classified genetic engineering, rose toward the surface carrying their payload. Drone swarms with neural networks modeled on Earth's most efficient predators. Each unit could operate independently or function as part of a collective intelligence, adapting tactics faster than any conventional combat system. Admiral Zorax reviewed the initial reconnaissance data with growing unease. The primitive nuclear arsenals his sensors detected remained surprisingly dormant, almost as if the humans didn't consider them their primary defense. More puzzling were the energy signatures emanating from locations that Imperial intelligence had designated as inconsequential. A commercial fishing operation in Madagascar, an abandoned mining complex in Canada, a children's science museum in Brazil. Their military response is inconsistent, he noted to his tactical officer. They've mobilized ground forces, but aren't attempting to evacuate population centers. Several of their leaders appear to be deliberately drawing our attention to obvious military installations. A primitive attempt at misdirection, suggested Sub-Commander Vex. Perhaps, or something we're missing. Initiate standard infiltration protocol. Deploy scout vessels and begin atmospheric insertion. The first Imperial landing craft entered Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean, aiming for an uninhabited island that satellite data indicated was ideal for establishing a forward base. The automated vessels detected no defensive measures, no military presence, nothing that would suggest resistance. Then they encountered the mesh. Invisible to conventional sensors, the nanoscale carbon-silicon weave had been dispersed throughout Earth's upper atmosphere by weather control systems disguised as climate research. The seemingly delicate structure carried a devastating electromagnetic charge calibrated specifically to Imperial propulsion systems, knowledge gleaned from decades studying crashed scout ships. Aboard the flagship, alarms blared as the first wave of landing craft disintegrated. Zorax watched in disbelief as the primitive civilization he'd expected to subjugate within hours demonstrated technological capabilities that shouldn't have been possible given their observed development trajectory. Impossible, he hissed. Their historical records show no evidence of this level of advancement. Commander Krell, his intelligence officer, reviewed the incoming data with growing concern. The humans appear to have compartmentalized their technological development, sir. Each nation developed different aspects independently. What we're witnessing isn't a unified defense system. It's dozens of specialized technologies functioning in concert for the first time. In the White House Situation Room, President Harlow received the first confirmation of successful defensive measures. The Secretary of Defense gestured toward the global deployment map, where green indicators showed activated systems on every continent. The deception worked, Madam President. They expected a centralized response and prepared countermeasures for our known military capabilities. Instead, they're facing technologies developed in isolation, with no unified signature for their intelligence to detect beforehand. General Winters allowed herself the smallest smile. We've spent centuries fighting each other, developing weapons and countermeasures that evolved through constant adaptation. Now we're using everything we've learned against an enemy that has only known easy victories. Across the planet, humanity revealed its greatest advantage. They had never trusted each other enough to centralize their defenses, and that very lack of trust had created a technological diversity the monolithic hegemony couldn't comprehend or counter. Admiral Zorax had conquered 17 solar systems without deploying the hegemony's full military capabilities. Standard protocol dictated measured escalation, a demonstration of overwhelming force against military targets to compel surrender while preserving infrastructure and population centers for integration. The unexpected loss of the initial landing craft demanded a more aggressive approach, but still within established parameters. Target their primary military command centers, he ordered, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. Precision strikes only. We need their manufacturing capacity intact. The Imperial gunners calibrated their graviton cannons, weapons that could shatter continental plates, but were now tuned for surgical precision. Energy cascaded through the massive emitters as targeting systems locked onto the Pentagon, the Kremlin, Beijing's Central Military Commission, and similar facilities across Earth. Lieutenant Commander Rika Manning hunched over her console in the Pentagon's Quantum Response Center, 300 feet beneath the building that Imperial sensors identified as Earth's primary military nexus. Her fingers flew across holographic interfaces as she initiated the Chimera protocol. Mirror sights active, she confirmed to General Winters. Quantum entanglement established. Above, the actual Pentagon building housed only administrative staff and tourists, all evacuated hours earlier. The real command centers had been relocated decades ago, replaced by sophisticated holographic projections that mimicked thermal, electronic, and gravitational signatures of military activity. Similar decoys existed at every major military headquarters worldwide, a deception born from humanity's long history of preparing for nuclear exchanges among themselves. The Imperial barrage released enough energy to power Earth's civilization for a century, precisely targeted to neutralize humanity's command infrastructure in a single overwhelming strike. Graviton beams cut through the atmosphere with devastating precision and struck empty buildings, hardened decoys, and abandoned facilities. In the Oval Office, the President watched live satellite feeds as apparent devastation struck Washington. The Pentagon appeared to collapse, its iconic shape crumbling under alien weaponry. Similar scenes played out in Moscow, Beijing, London, and New Delhi. To any observer, particularly orbital sensors, Earth's military command structure had been decapitated in minutes. "Counterstrike authorized," she said quietly. In the Gobi Desert, Colonel John Way activated the Ascendant Dragon Array. massive electromagnetic accelerators disguised as mineral mining equipment. Similar installations in the Australian outback, Canadian wilderness, and Sahara Desert powered up simultaneously. These railguns had been designed to defend against asteroid impacts, their development justified to the public as planetary protection measures. Payload configuration. Zhang asked his weapons officer. Tungsten kinetic penetrators with phase-shifting outer shells stir. Impact velocity calculated at 0.037 c. The officer didn't need to elaborate. At 3.7% of light speed, even relatively small projectiles carried apocalyptic energy. The weapons had never been intended for use against other humans, their devastating potential too great for any terrestrial conflict. But against an orbital aggressor, they were ideal. Fire when ready. Across Earth, electromagnetic arrays discharged simultaneously. The projectiles, appearing as nothing more significant than meteorites on Imperial sensors, accelerated to near-relativistic velocities within seconds. Their outer shells, composed of metamaterials developed through decades of classified research, partially phased the projectiles out of conventional space-time, rendering them nearly undetectable until impact. Aboard the Imperial support vessel Inevitable Conquest, Navigation Officer Trell noticed the anomalous readings too late. Energy spike from surface. Multiple. The kinetic penetrators struck 7 Imperial vessels before defensive systems could respond. The tungsten cores, traveling at relativistic speeds, passed through energy shields calibrated to stop conventional weapons and exotic particles. Imperial hulls, designed to withstand nuclear detonations and energy weapons, offered minimal resistance against simple objects moving at speeds their designers had never contemplated defending against. Admiral Zorax watched in stunned disbelief as the vessels, including his secondary command ship, disintegrated into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Alarms blared across the command deck as tactical officers scrambled to identify the unexpected threat. Analysis, he demanded. Primitive kinetic weapons, reported his science officer incredulously, but accelerated beyond any capability we assessed them to possess. Their velocity negated our phase shields completely. Before Zorax could process this information, a second wave of impacts tore through the fleet's formation. 3 more capital ships vanished in blinding flashes as relativistic projectiles converted their mass into pure energy. For the first time in his 3-century military career, the Admiral felt something alien to his species' psychology. Uncertainty. In orbit above Mars, the automated defense platforms that humanity had positioned under the guise of scientific research activated their gravitational lensing technology. The seemingly minimal Martian presence, dismissed by Imperial intelligence as inconsequential, revealed its true purpose: a perfect observation post beyond Earth's atmosphere, providing targeting data to ground-based weapon systems. Colonel Jessica Hawkins monitored the engagement from her command post beneath Cheyenne Mountain, the facility's quantum-entangled communications undetectable by Imperial sensors. The tactical display showed 17 confirmed Imperial ship destructions, far fewer than hoped, but enough to prove human weapons could pierce their defenses. They'll adapt quickly, she noted to her staff. Prepare for Phase 2. We've shocked them. But now, the real fight begins. The Imperial War College had trained Admiral Zorax for every conceivable combat scenario. The tactical simulators aboard the flagship Dominant Ascension contained conquest protocols for 17,000 distinct species across 8 galactic sectors. None had prepared him for humans. The attack pattern makes no strategic sense, Sub-Commander Vex reported, mandibles clicking with agitation as he reviewed the damage assessment. They targeted our support vessels rather than command ships and left our primary weapons platforms untouched. Zorax studied the holographic battle projection with growing frustration. The human counterattack had destroyed 23 ships, barely 3% of his fleet, yet they had selected targets with bewildering precision, crippling the Armada's logistics rather than its offensive capabilities. Their strategy prioritizes disruption over destruction, he observed. Analysis of their historical conflicts. Science Officer Mira activated the central data column, displaying centuries of human warfare. Their combat evolution is irregular, Admiral. Unlike other species, they abandoned effective tactics repeatedly throughout their development, sometimes reverting to objectively inferior methods. Explain. Their military doctrines should have evolved linearly toward efficiency, yet repeatedly diverged based on cultural, ethical, and even aesthetic considerations. They've implemented different combat philosophies simultaneously, some emphasizing overwhelming force, others precision, others psychological impact. Zorax's inner eyelids narrowed. You're suggesting their unpredictability is deliberate. Their historical records indicate they maintain multiple contradictory defense systems as a foundational strategy. They call it strategic redundancy. In the underground command center beneath Sydney Harbor, Dr. Imani Okoro monitored the Imperial communications intercepted by the quantum entanglement array. Her team of linguists and xenopsychologists had spent the past 18 hours analyzing the hegemony's tactical protocols, identifying patterns that revealed crucial weaknesses. They think linearly, she explained to the assembled military leaders on the secure holographic conference. Their conquest methodology has worked on thousands of worlds because those civilizations developed along predictable technological paths. We didn't. General Winters nodded. Because we spent millennia trying to kill each other instead of advancing cooperatively. Precisely. Human technology developed in response to human threats, creating branches of advancement the Imperials consider illogical or inefficient. They expected us to focus on energy weapons, but we maintained and enhanced kinetic systems. They anticipated centralized command, but we operate through distributed networks. President Harlow leaned forward. Can we exploit this advantage before they adapt? Dr. Okoro's expression remained grave. They're already analyzing our response patterns. We estimate 4 to 6 hours before they develop effective countermeasures to our current tactics. Then we change tactics before they can adapt. The Chinese premier interjected. We have spent centuries refining the art of asymmetric warfare against superior forces. Now we use everything we have learned. Across the globe, military commanders implemented protocols that had evolved through centuries of human conflict. Guerrilla warfare doctrines developed in Vietnam and Afghanistan. Electronic countermeasures pioneered during the Cold War. Psychological operations refined through decades of counterterrorism. Each nation contributed combat philosophies shaped by their unique historical experiences, creating a constantly shifting defense that the monolithic Imperial tactical computers struggle to predict. Aboard the dominant Ascension, Admiral Zorax received increasingly desperate reports from his intelligence division. The humans are implementing conflicting strategies simultaneously, reported Commander Krell. Northern Hemisphere forces are employing decentralized resistance tactics, while Southern forces maintain conventional formations. Some weapons target our communications, others are propulsion systems, with no discernible pattern. They can't maintain this chaos indefinitely, Zorax insisted. No species fights against its own strategic interest. Their resistance will crystallize into recognizable patterns we can counter. There's something else, Admiral. Krell continued, his tone uncharacteristically hesitant. We've intercepted their civilian communications networks. They're celebrating. Celebrating what? Their inevitable defeat. No, sir. The battle itself. Their information channels are filled with historical references to previous conflicts where they prevailed against superior forces. They're sharing tactical suggestions openly, distributing resistance manuals. Their civilian scientific networks are collaboratively analyzing our technology to identify weaknesses. For the first time in his career, Admiral Zorax felt the unfamiliar sensation of doubt creeping into his tactical assessment. The Empire had conquered worlds with superior technology, worlds with larger populations, worlds with more resources, but never a world that embraced warfare as intrinsically as humans did. In her private office adjacent to the Sydney Command Center, Dr. Okoro finished translating the most recent batch of intercepted Imperial communications. One exchange between Admiral Zorax and the Imperial High Command particularly caught her attention, a phrase that confirmed her hypothesis about the hegemony's fundamental vulnerability. "They're asking why we're not afraid," she told General Winters over the secure channel. "Their entire conquest protocol assumes that fear of extinction will drive rational species to surrender. They've never encountered a species whose response to existential threat is defiance rather than submission." General Winters allowed herself a grim smile. "Then let's show them exactly what humans do when backed into a corner." The Imperial Armada regrouped in high Earth orbit, reconfiguring their formation into the hegemony's most defensible configuration, the impenetrable sphere. With remaining vessels arranged in concentric layers, each protecting the vulnerabilities of adjacent ships, the formation had withstood assaults from dozens of civilizations across thousands of years. Admiral Zorax addressed his war council from the command throne, his voice steady despite the unprecedented losses. "We will implement Adaptation Protocol 7. All vessels will rotate shield frequencies randomly. Weapon systems will disperse targeting across multiple redundant networks. The humans have shown ingenuity, but they cannot penetrate a unified defense." Commander Krell presented the revised assault plan, a simultaneous strike against Earth's largest population centers using non-lethal suppression fields. The attack would demonstrate Imperial power while preserving the human workforce for eventual integration into the hegemony's labor pools. "Deploy on my mark," Zorax commanded. Standard conquest timeline remains in effect. Beneath Lake Baikal in Siberia, Dr. Natalia Sokolova made the final adjustments to the Tesla array, a global network of electromagnetic induction towers disguised as power transmission infrastructure. Developed originally as a weather modification system, the array could generate controlled ionospheric disturbances on a planetary scale. Calibration complete, she confirmed to the Unified Command. Atmospheric ionization at optimal levels. Similar confirmations arrived from facilities in the Andes Mountains, the Australian outback, and beneath the Greenland ice sheet. Machinery that had been concealed from the public and from potential alien observers for decades hummed to life simultaneously. General Winters reviewed the status indicators on her tactical display. Operation Thunderclap is go. All assets in position. Across Earth's oceans, submarines that had quietly positioned themselves at geomagnetically significant coordinates activated their specialized payloads. Not weapons in the conventional sense, but electromagnetic pulse generators designed to work in concert with the ionospheric disturbances created by the Tesla array. In orbit, Admiral Zorax gave the command to fire. Energy coursed through the Imperial weapons systems, building toward simultaneous discharge, only to encounter an unexpected phenomenon. The ionosphere, supercharged by the Tesla array, had become an electromagnetic mirror, creating a reflective barrier that the Imperial targeting systems couldn't penetrate. "Energy dispersion detected in planetary atmosphere," reported the tactical officer. "Targeting systems cannot establish lock." Before Zorax could issue new orders, the submarines detonated their EMP devices. The pulses, magnified and channeled by the ionospheric disturbance, created an electromagnetic tsunami that washed over the Imperial formation. Shields designed to stop physical projectiles and energy weapons offered no protection against the precisely modulated electromagnetic disruption. Throughout the Armada, systems faltered. Communication networks dissolved into static. Navigation computers reset themselves repeatedly. Weapons systems initiated emergency shutdowns to prevent catastrophic overloads. "Impossible," Zorax hissed, watching as his unified command network fractured into isolated clusters. "Their primitive electromagnetics shouldn't penetrate our quantum-shielded systems." Science officer Mira analyzed the attack pattern with growing alarm. "They're not using brute electromagnetic force, Admiral. They've modulated the pulse to create resonance patterns that exploit quantum entanglement vulnerabilities. They shouldn't have knowledge of these principles for another century according to standard development models. In the White House Situation Room, Dr. Marcus Wong explained the attack's unprecedented success. "We've been studying quantum entanglement since the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paper in 1935. The recovery of alien materials from various crash sites accelerated our understanding, but the fundamental principles were developed through purely human theoretical work." President Harlow studied the orbital tactical display, where Imperial vessels drifted in disarray. "How long will the disruption last?" "Minutes at most," Dr. Wong cautioned. "Their systems are designed to recover from far worse damage. This isn't a decisive blow. It's an opening for Phase 2. That opening was all Earth needed. From concealed hangars in the Himalayas, the Amazon rainforest, and the Antarctic ice shelf, humanity's secret aerospace fleet launched into the upper atmosphere. The vessels, appearing crude by Imperial standards, incorporated technologies that human governments had developed in isolation over decades, now unified for the first time. Colonel Takahashi Yuki led the assault wing from her command vessel, the Tengu. All squadrons maintain emission control until breach altitude. Remember your training. These craft will handle differently in vacuum than in atmosphere. The pilots, drawn from elite air forces worldwide, had trained for this scenario in classified programs for years, preparing for a day most believed would never come. Now they ascended toward the disorganized Imperial formation, their craft's stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible against Earth's background radiation. Admiral Zorax's first indication of the human counterattack came when 3 support vessels at the formation's periphery simultaneously reported hull breaches. The small human craft had bypassed the temporarily disabled shields and deployed boarding teams directly onto Imperial vessels, a tactic so antiquated that defense protocols against it had been archived centuries ago. "Repel boarders," he commanded, incredulity evident in his voice. "All vessels initiate internal security protocols." But the human boarding parties weren't attempting conventional capture. They moved through the Imperial ships with precision, planting devices at critical junctions before withdrawing. The explosive charges, containing experimental quantum destabilizers, detonated simultaneously, creating cascading system failures throughout the affected vessels. As his command network gradually re-established itself, Zorax faced an uncomfortable realization. The humans weren't fighting to win an impossible victory. They were fighting to survive, to inflict maximum damage before their inevitable defeat, a concept so alien to Imperial military doctrine that it rendered their tactical predictive models useless. "They know they cannot defeat us," he told Commander Krell, "yet they continue fighting with increasing intensity. Their behavior contradicts all rational response models." Krell's reply was interrupted by proximity alarms as the second wave of Earth's aerospace forces engaged the recovering Imperial fleet. The human vessels, now visible as they activated weapon systems, demonstrated maneuverability that Imperial tactical computers classified as pilot-level pulling accelerations that should have killed their biological operators. "How are their pilots surviving those G-forces?" Zorax demanded. Science Officer Mira analyzed the intercepted communications. "They're using rudimentary liquid breathing technology combined with acceleration couches. Primitive but effective. Their pilots are suffering significant physiological strain but remaining conscious through chemical enhancement." The implication was clear. The humans were willing to endure potentially fatal stresses to gain tactical advantage, another concept foreign to the long-lived, risk-averse Imperial culture. As Earth's aerospace forces engaged the disoriented Imperial vessels, Dr. Okoro monitored the battle from the Sydney Command Center. "They're adapting more quickly than anticipated," she noted, electromagnetic effectiveness dropping as they recalibrate shields. General Winters nodded grimly. "We expected as much. That's why we're hitting them with everything simultaneously. They can't adapt to all of it at once." The Tesla array powered up for its second phase, this time configured to generate an entirely different effect. Earth hadn't just been developing weapons, It had been developing options. The Imperial hegemony had conquered civilizations across 17 galactic sectors without altering their standard conquest protocols. For millennia, overwhelming force had been sufficient. Now, for the first time, Admiral Zorax authorized deviation from established doctrine. "Implement extinction protocol," he commanded, his voice carrying a finality that silenced the command deck. "Prepare planet killers for deployment." Commander Krell's inner eyelids flickered with alarm, the gesture equivalent to human gasping. "Admiral, High Command hasn't authorized." "The High Command isn't here," Zorax interrupted. "This species cannot be permitted to further develop their military capabilities. They represent an existential threat to Imperial stability." Aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, weapon officers began the complex activation sequence for devices the hegemony had deployed only twice in its 5,000-year history. The planet killers, reality fracture devices that destabilized planetary gravitational fields, would reduce Earth to an asteroid belt within hours. In Houston's Johnson Space Center, repurposed for military operations, astronaut Colonel Maya Patol received the quantum-encrypted alert that Imperial communications had suddenly shifted to previously undetected frequencies. "They're preparing something big," she warned the Unified Command. "Energy readings from their central dreadnoughts have spiked exponentially." Dr. Wong analyzed the sensor data, his expression grave. "Those signatures match theoretical models for space-time manipulation weapons. If they deploy those devices, conventional defenses will be useless." President Harlow exchanged glances with other world leaders on the secure conference. The moment they had prepared for had arrived sooner than anticipated. Authorized Prometheus Protocol. Full deployment. Beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, the International Research Station designated Vostok 7 revealed its true purpose. Massive hydraulic systems pushed aside the 2-kilometer ice layer covering Lake Vostok, exposing a vast artificial structure that had remained hidden from orbital observation for decades. Dr. Elena Singh entered final authorization codes into the control system, initiating wormhole stabilization, quantum coherence at nominal levels. The device, built through multinational cooperation, yet kept secret even from most government officials, represented the pinnacle of human theoretical physics, made manifest through reverse-engineered alien technology. It created a stable wormhole, but not for transportation as science fiction had imagined. This wormhole served a singular purpose: redirecting energy. As the Imperial planet killers powered up, targeting solutions locked onto Earth's core, the weapons reached full charge, ready to unleash gravitational distortions that would tear the planet apart from within. Admiral Zorax gave the command to fire. The devastating energies surged from the Imperial dreadnoughts, cutting through space toward their target, only to encounter an unexpected phenomenon. The wormhole aperture, invisible until energy interaction, captured the incoming destructive force and redirected it. Across Earth, modified radio telescopes, particle accelerators, and fusion research facilities revealed secondary functions, generating stabilization fields that maintained the wormhole's integrity against the immense energies flowing through it. The redirected planet killer energy erupted from a second wormhole aperture, directly within the Imperial formation. Admiral Zorax watched in horror as his own weapon's energy engulfed a dozen capital ships. Vessels that had survived thousands of engagements disintegrated instantly, their matter converted to exotic particles by the redirected gravitational weapons. "Emergency dispersion," he ordered, but the damage cascaded through the tightly packed formation. Ships attempting to escape collided with debris, their shields already overwhelmed by the initial energy wave. In the lunar observation post, disguised as a scientific outpost, Major Hiroshi Tanaka tracked the devastation through quantum-shielded sensors. Imperial formation is breaking apart. Confirmed destruction of 27 capital vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. General Winters received the report with measured satisfaction. The wormhole redirection had exceeded expectations, but they had only moments before the Imperials recovered and adapted. Launch Phoenix squadrons. All units cleared for phase shift ordnance. From concealed bases worldwide, aerospace craft launched carrying humanity's most devastating non-planetary weapons, devices combining conventional explosives with exotic matter injectors. Developed through decades of classified quantum physics research, the weapons could temporarily shift portions of their target into adjacent dimensional spaces, bypassing shields entirely. Colonel Takahashi led the assault personally, her voice steady as she transmitted to all squadron leaders. Remember your approach vectors. Their point defense systems will prioritize standard attack trajectories. Use the unconventional insertion patterns from the Kobayashi simulations. The human craft approached using maneuvers that Imperial tactical computers classified as non-optimal, twisting, corkscrewing paths that sacrificed fuel efficiency and increased pilot strain beyond recommended safety margins. But the unorthodox approach patterns confused automated targeting systems calibrated for logical attack vectors. Admiral Zorax, witnessing the human counterattack develop, recognized too late the fatal flaw in Imperial military doctrine. They had optimized their defenses against enemies who fought rationally. The humans, willing to accept significant losses and physical trauma to gain tactical advantage, operated outside the parameters of Imperial strategic models. All vessels switched to manual targeting. He commanded, a reversion to techniques unused for centuries. Disregard efficiency algorithms. But the order came too late. The Phoenix squadrons penetrated the disorganized Imperial formation, delivering their phase shift weapons with precision born from centuries of aerial combat evolution. Capital ships that had survived countless engagements against spacefaring civilizations fell to weapons designed by a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel less than a decade ago. The Imperial response, fragmented as communication networks, already damaged by earlier electromagnetic attacks, struggled to coordinate the scattered fleet. Vessels accustomed to fighting as unified battle groups found themselves isolated, facing human attackers who operated effectively as independent units. In the Sydney Command Center, Dr. Okoro observed the battle's progression with cautious optimism. They're attempting to re-establish formation integrity, but their coordination has broken down. Their communication encryption has regressed to simpler algorithms. They're sacrificing security for speed. General Winters nodded. They're improvising. For a culture built on algorithmic certainty, that's dangerous territory. Aboard the dominant Ascension, Admiral Zorax faced the unthinkable: retreat. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never withdrawn from battle. The concept violated core Imperial doctrines of inevitable victory. Prepare disengagement protocols, he ordered, his voice betraying no emotion despite the unprecedented command. Priority vessels will create screening formation for withdrawal. Commander Krell executed the orders despite visible distress at abandoning the conquest timeline. The High Command will require explanation. The explanation is simple, Zorax replied. We face a species unlike any we have encountered, one whose greatest strength is their irrationality. As the remains of the once mighty Armada began their withdrawal, Earth's defenders pressed their advantage. The humans, sensing Imperial disarray, launched additional strikes against retreating vessels, violating standard military conventions that allowed for honorable withdrawal. They're not just fighting to survive, Zorax realized. They're fighting to win. The Imperial retreat violated every strategic doctrine in the hegemony's 5-millennium military history. As the surviving vessels attempted to regroup beyond lunar orbit, Admiral Zorax received the unthinkable, a direct quantum transmission from Emperor Korlax himself, bridging 20 light-years instantaneously. Explain this aberration, Admiral, the Emperor demanded, his multifaceted eyes glittering with cold fury in the holographic projection. No species has repelled an Imperial Armada since the Ascension Wars. Zorax maintained perfect military posture despite the unprecedented setback. The humans employ technologies and tactics that contradict all predictive models, your luminance. They combine advanced theoretical applications with primitive methodologies in ways our tactical systems cannot anticipate. "You command the most powerful military force in 17 sectors," the Emperor replied. "Deviation from conquest protocol is unacceptable. I am dispatching the Imperial Guard and taking personal command. Maintain containment until reinforcements arrive." As the transmission ended, Zorax faced an uncomfortable realization. The Emperor, isolated in the Imperial throne world, could not comprehend the threat humans represented. The reinforcements would arrive expecting a conventional enemy and encounter the same devastating surprises. In the International Space Station, expanded and militarized over the preceding decades under cover of scientific research, Lieutenant Commander Sofia Rodriguez monitored Imperial communications through quantum intercept technology. "They're calling for reinforcements," she reported to Unified Command. "Approximately 6 hours until a second Imperial fleet arrives through faster-than-light transit." President Harlow's expression remained resolute on the secure conference screen. "Then we have 6 hours to finish this. General Winters, implement Ragnarok Protocol." The command activated systems that had remained dormant throughout the conflict, humanity's final and most devastating capabilities, reserved for extinction-level threats. Across the planet, military installations revealed hidden functions, powering up technologies developed through both reverse engineering and independent human innovation. In the Marianas Trench Research Facility, Dr. James Chen initiated the Quantum Entanglement Cascade, a weapon system that targeted the fundamental particles binding Imperial technology. Unlike conventional attacks, the cascade created quantum resonance patterns that spread from ship to ship through their own communication networks. "Entanglement field stabilized," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Targeting Imperial command frequencies." The cascade deployed not as a destructive force, but as an infiltration system, corrupting Imperial navigation, life support, and weapons systems at the quantum level. Vessels that had survived the initial battle suddenly found critical systems failing in cascading sequence, the technological equivalent of a virulent contagion spreading through their tightly integrated networks. Admiral Zorax watched helplessly as ship after ship reported critical malfunctions. Systems designed with multiple redundancies failed simultaneously as the quantum corruption spread through subspace communication channels. The remaining dreadnoughts, including his flagship, initiated emergency isolation protocols, cutting themselves off from the fleet network to prevent infection. "Status report," he demanded. 70% of remaining vessels compromised. Commander Krull responded, his voice strained. "The humans have weaponized quantum entanglement itself. Our systems are unraveling at the subatomic level." The isolated Imperial capital ships, now unable to coordinate with their support vessels, faced the next phase of Earth's counterattack. From positions around the solar system, automated defense platforms that had remained dormant throughout the battle revealed themselves, powering up gravitational lance weapons. These platforms, disguised as asteroid mining operations, communications relays, and scientific outposts, had been positioned over decades, creating a defense grid extending beyond Neptune's orbit. The gravitational lances, powered by miniaturized singularities, generated focused gravitational distortions that overwhelmed even Imperial inertial compensation systems. Colonel Jessica Hawkins coordinated the assault from the Mars Command Center. All platforms activated. Gravitational distortion fields at maximum intensity. The effect on the Imperial vessels was catastrophic. Ships designed to withstand conventional attacks found their internal structures compressed by localized gravitational anomalies. Hull plates buckled, reinforced bulkheads collapsed, and antimatter containment systems failed under gravitational stresses they were never designed to endure. In low Earth orbit, the aerospace carrier Defiant launched the final wave of attack craft. Unlike previous assaults, these vessels carried no conventional weapons, only quantum field generators designed to create safe extraction corridors. "This is Colonel Takahashi to all Phoenix squadrons," came the transmission. "Primary targets are designated for capture, not destruction. The Emperor's reinforcements must find more than debris when they arrive." The human fighters, demonstrating maneuverability that Imperial tactical computers still struggled to predict, penetrated the defensive fire of the remaining capital ships. Rather than deploying explosives, they established quantum stabilization fields around designated vessels, counteracting the gravitational attacks long enough for specialized boarding teams to approach. Admiral Zorax, observing the precision of the human assault, recognized their intent. They're selecting specific vessels for capture. Prioritize self-destruction protocols on critical technology centers. But the quantum entanglement cascade had already compromised those systems on affected ships. Vessels that should have been capable of obliterating themselves to prevent capture instead fell intact into human hands, including the dreadnought Eternal Dominion with its complete database of Imperial military protocols. In the White House Situation Room, Dr. Wong analyzed incoming data from the captured vessels. We're accessing their navigation charts and communication protocols. We'll be able to track the reinforcement fleet's exact arrival coordinates. And their weaknesses? President Harlow asked. The Imperial Guard vessels use standardized designs, more powerful but less adaptive than what we faced. They rely heavily on predictive combat algorithms. Now that we understand their programming architecture, he didn't need to finish the thought. Earth would be ready when the reinforcements arrived. Admiral Zorax, aboard one of the few remaining functional vessels, watched as his once mighty armada disintegrated. Ships that had conquered countless civilizations drifted powerless or fell under human control. The unthinkable had happened, not just defeat, but comprehensive military collapse. Order all remaining vessels to execute emergency translation, he commanded. Randomly selected coordinates, maximum dispersion. We must warn the Empire. As the surviving Imperial ships prepared for faster-than-light escape, Earth activated its final defensive measure. The lunar installation, hidden beneath the Tycho crater, generated a localized space-time disruption field, preventing faster-than-light translations within the solar system. Zorax received the report with something approaching human emotion: despair. We're trapped. For the first time in Imperial history, an armada faced not just defeat but annihilation. The humans, defending their homeworld with unexpected ferocity and ingenuity, had achieved what 17 sectors of space had failed to accomplish in 5,000 years. The reinforcements, Commander Krell said quietly. They have no idea what they're flying into. Admiral Zorax stared at the tactical display, where human vessels systematically neutralized his remaining forces. No, he agreed. They don't. The Imperial reinforcements emerged from faster-than-light transit, precisely where predicted, directly into the waiting trap Earth had prepared. The Emperor's personal guard, comprising 200 elite warships, materialized expecting to support a struggling conquest force. Instead, they encountered a transformed battlefield. Their first sensor readings detected the remnants of the original Armada, vessels drifting powerless or under human control. Before Imperial commanders could process this unprecedented scenario, the quantum entanglement cascade that had devastated the First Fleet transmitted through the reinforcements' automated recognition protocols. Systems designed to identify friendly vessels inadvertently accepted the quantum corruption, spreading it throughout the new arrivals. Emperor Xorlax, observing through remote sensors aboard his command dreadnought, faced a reality no Imperial leader had confronted in 5 millennia: the prospect of personal defeat. Impossible, he whispered, multifaceted eyes narrowing at tactical displays, showing his elite forces falling into disarray before firing a single shot. Activate the Sundering Protocol. The command initiated the Empire's ultimate weapon, reality fracture devices designed to collapse an entire star system into a singularity. The devastating technology had never been deployed, existing only as a final option against existential threats. In the Lunar Command Center, Dr. Singh detected the distinctive energy signature building within the Imperial flagship. They're preparing to collapse the entire system, she warned. Gravitational readings are off the scale. President Harlow exchanged glances with world leaders on the secure conference. The moment required no discussion. They had prepared for even this contingency. Activate the mirror. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, at the convergence point of 3 tectonic plates, the culmination of Project Looking Glass powered up. The massive installation, built through secret international cooperation spanning 40 years, represented humanity's understanding of multidimensional physics taken to its logical conclusion. Dr. Elena Sokolova, monitoring from the underwater facility, confirmed activation. Dimensional inversion field stabilized. Targeting parameters locked. The mirror didn't attempt to counter the Imperial sundering protocol directly. Instead, it created a localized dimensional inversion, a precisely calibrated reflection of space-time itself. As the Emperor's weapon discharged its reality-destroying energy, the mirror redirected it through a higher dimensional fold, returning it to its precise origin point. Emperor Kvorlax had a single moment to comprehend what the humans had accomplished before his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, collapsed into a microscopic singularity. The dimensional feedback cascaded through the Imperial command network, trapping the reinforcement fleet in a localized space-time distortion from which nothing escaped. In Earth orbit, Admiral Zorax witnessed the Emperor's demise from the bridge of his disabled flagship, now under human control. The expression that crossed his alien features approximated human awe. "You prepared for everything," he said to General Winters, who had personally led the boarding party. "Even the sundering protocol." "We've spent centuries imagining our own extinction," she replied simply. "There are few doomsday scenarios humans haven't contemplated and prepared for." The battle concluded not with the expected decimation of Earth, but with the complete neutralization of the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever known. As debris and disabled vessels drifted through the solar system, humanity faced an unexpected question. What next? 3 months later, the United Nations Interstellar Council convened in its newly constructed chamber in Geneva. Representatives from all Earth nations gathered alongside an unprecedented addition. Delegates from 17 formerly subjugated species brought to the conference through captured Imperial transport technology. President Harlow addressed the historic gathering. "The Imperial threat has been neutralized, but a power vacuum now exists across 17 galactic sectors. The hegemony subjugated thousands of worlds through force. We have an opportunity and responsibility to offer an alternative." Admiral Zorax, now the highest-ranking Imperial survivor, stood before the assembly as both prisoner and witness. "The Empire has stood for 50 centuries. Its absence will create chaos unless replaced by a new order." Dr. Okoro, whose synapsecological insights had proven crucial during the conflict, presented the comprehensive proposal developed by an international committee. "We suggest forming the Galactic Cooperative, a voluntary association of species united not through conquest, but mutual benefit. Member worlds would maintain sovereignty while sharing technology, resources, and defensive capabilities." The proposal represented something unprecedented, a galactic governance system designed by a species that had nearly been conquered, informed by their long history of overcoming internal divisions and external threats. The former Imperial Admiral studied the humans with new understanding. "You could simply take the Empire's place. Your military capabilities have proven superior. Why offer partnership instead of demanding subjugation?" General Winters answered with the simple truth that defined humanity. "Because we remember being the underdog. Our history is filled with empires that rose through conquest and fell through resistance. We've learned that domination creates only temporary stability. Cooperation, though more complex, builds something more enduring." As Earth prepared to take its place among the stars, humanity's greatest strength became clear, not their weapons or technology, but their capacity to transform conflict into cooperation. The species that had nearly faced extinction now offered the galaxy something the Empire never could: the wisdom earned through millennia of overcoming their own worst instincts. In Earth orbit, construction began on the Galactic Cooperative Headquarters, a massive station incorporating architectural elements from all member species. At its center stood a simple monument containing artifacts from human history: stone tools, bronze weapons, nuclear missiles, and finally, the quantum technologies that had defended Earth. The inscription, translated into all known galactic languages, summarized the lesson humanity offered the stars. We came to the brink of self-destruction countless times, yet chose to survive. We faced extinction from beyond, yet chose to thrive. The wisdom to build peace comes only to those who truly understand war. Admiral Zorax, granted provisional citizenship in recognition of his eventual cooperation, observed Earth's night sky alongside Dr. Okoro. The stars no longer represented conquest targets but new possibilities. Your species confused our tactical predictions because you don't think like conquerors, he noted. You think like survivors. Dr. Okoro smiled. That's why we prevailed. The Imperial Armada came expecting to find just another conquest. Instead, they'd found humanity. Across the solar system, the dust of battle gradually dispersed. The remnants of Imperial vessels, once the galaxy's most feared military force, drifted alongside the new construction projects marking humanity's emergence as an interstellar civilization. The empire that had ruled through fear for 5 millennia had been reduced to memory. Earth, the improbable victor, now offered the galaxy something it had never known: peace built by warriors who understood the true cost of war and the greater value of cooperation.